Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn fight has now been postponed. This follows Benn's positive drugs test. Let's get some immediate reaction. Ambrose Mendy, former manager of Nigel Benn and also former agent of Chris Eubank Jr. Ambrose, afternoon to you. How did we ever get to a stage where this was even a debate once a fighter had tested positive for a banned substance?
Well, you know, it beggars belief in many respects. I was yesterday at Tottenham Court Road where we were having the media event, and it was just a room of confusion, where people were asking themselves questions, knowing full well what the answers were. And I think for once there's an accord which the British Boxing Board of Control have put down, and people using common sense have said we need at least time to reflect, you know, on their decision-making process. Boxing, of course, lost itself a little bit in the wake of the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, when we were slow to react, and I used the collective, we were slow to react, and fighters were left in the mire. You know, what should they do? What can they do? And we know, of course, that that event was put off and now resumes next week. I'm delighted at the outcome. Let me say that, for the sake of boxing in the immediate future and thereafterwards, those parties that are directly affected by this will have, as I said earlier on, time to reflect. Certainly, it would appear that Conor has a lot of thinking to do, and that those that guide him, I hope and trust, will do it correctly.
Yeah. It seems, Ambrose, I mean, it is, and I think you've already articulated this as well, the more you think about it, you think, hang on, so we had this, you know, very regrettable when any athlete, as a sportsman, tests positive. We know that there is a B test coming at some point, but certainly once you've got that first result, the idea that there were lots of people around, I'm just seeing lots of pound notes in this story somewhere along the line, because it feels that perhaps that was the motivation for those that wanted, despite all the authorities going, this should not go ahead, it's not in the interest of boxing, there were others that were saying, no, this can still happen. I mean, was that just a money thing? Is it as simple and as crass as that?
Well, we're going to find out how this pans out, because those that were solely motivated and directed by money are going to be worst affected because they refuse to lose. The people that are around the thinking table at the present moment are such as Eddie Hearn. You know, Eddie's a businessman, he'll think this through. If he said anything that he shouldn't have said over the last 24, 48 hours, it came from experience, not making excuses for him. But everybody in boxing and the immediate proximity is affected by what has happened here. And so we should be, and there should be careful thought given to the announcements that this is, I've heard it said, a postponement. Does that mean to say that we're going to find out what the test results A and B truly are? I don't know. But what I am convinced of is it's now back in the hands of the British Boxing Board of Control. Hopefully they will do the right thing.
Indeed. I'm assuming, bearing in mind your previous relationship with Nigel Benn, you've probably known Conor since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Were you surprised when this story first broke, Ambrose?
Yeah, I was very surprised. You know, Conor obviously watched him from a distance growing up and everything else, but his focus, his application, his determination, his dedication, and then, of course, his environment is with Tony Sims. You know, no nonsense, things to be done in an admirable way. So, yeah, I am. And like everybody else, I'm set keen on listening and understanding listening to and understanding the explanation for what has happened, because it warrants understanding.
Absolutely. And what is the future for Conor Benn? I mean, or, you know, hypothetically, any fighter that has a positive drug test. We don't hear this in such high-profile circles as we have done in other sports over the years. There are other examples, obviously, but what happens to a fighter after this? Is there any way back?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand how it happened. Then there's got to be the acceptance of fault. Somebody has been at fault, and it still is at fault here. And we need what amounts to a confession, which is a reasoned explanation. What's going to happen? The last I heard, Conor Benn had one core skill, and that's as a fighter. And he'll fight tooth and nail to stay within that criteria. With regards to...
Yeah.
Sorry.
So no, go on, Ambrose. Sorry, I spoke across you.
You know, I know Nigel, obviously, very well. He's a devoted Christian. Nobody would have been more surprised, talking of surprises, than him.
Yeah.
And, of course, one as a parent, you ask your kids, whatever age they are, to explain something to you, and it requires revealing of the truth. You know, if you find out to your shock, horror, disgust, that it's something that you would never in a million years have associated yourself with.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to understand that. I also look to Robert Smith to get round to Conor and talk to him. You know, he's the secretary of the British Boxing Board of Control. The licenses are held with him. You know, I'd like to think that there's been a mistake somewhere along the line, particularly with regards to Conor, which gives him an opportunity to continue his career. Yeah,
we'll watch with interest on that point. But, of course, the idea that it might have gone ahead, Ambrose, and, you know, had there been something that a fighter had taken that did increase their potential in the ring and something awful had happened, I mean, we can only imagine the ramifications. I heard one commentator say that would have been the end of boxing.
Look, boxing exists because it's popular. People almost lay themselves prostrate in front of warriors. You know, kids who perhaps went through school as meek and mild have now taken up the sport. You go throughout every gym in the country, there's somebody doing something that is boxing related.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose that, not for a moment, and nor should we. Something's happened here, and it's got consequences. We're feeling them as we have this conversation.
Sure. I mean, on that point,
you can't sweep it under the carpet.
No,
let's not try to do that.
On that point, just from a business side of things, what kind of money is lost by cancelling a fight like this, Ambrose?
Well, let me give you an idea. Eddie Hearn, Eddie is a wise sage. He doesn't quite get the dad's old yet. Eddie estimates that pay-per-view subscriptions would be 1 million. They're £25 each. That's 25 million.
Yeah.
The figures bandied about. Chris was looking at £5 million, and Conor was looking at a similar sum.
Wow.
And you better believe these figures are achievable because, of course, we had recent participation in the Amir Khan and Kell Brook.
Yeah. So we are literally talking tens of millions of pounds here. Listen, Ambrose, I only cut in just for time, but it's been great to get your clear expert opinion and experience and take on that story. Ambrose Mendy.